Hi guys, so I'm here today just to kind of talk about the ritual that I do before I work out or before I lift, especially before I lift kettlebells. So I've gotten a lot of questions, the type of stretching or prep work that one would want to do before lifting. So I'm kind of going to just go through those very quickly, some mobility work in the joints and then some activations for certain muscle groups. So the first thing I do is working top to bottom. I'll do some mobility work, you know, kind of in the neck, work the way down, shoulder rolls, big shoulder circles, work the elbows, work the wrists, maybe a little bit more rotation, shoulders and elbows, and then I'll go down into the hips, so some hip circles are great, a little bit of work through the knees, work all the way down to the feet. So I'll kind of go top to bottom, and then I will actually take it to the floor. And I really like this drill for the thoracic spine opening. So just taking one hand behind the head, the other hand is on the floor. You're going to close the elbow and then pull the arms apart and letting the eyes follow the hand. And I'll usually do about 10 reps per side, slow. It doesn't have to be super fast. And then maybe some core activation. So arm leg reaches or pulses on both sides, just to kind of get the core fired up a little bit, nothing crazy. Then I'll go into my activation stuff. So I have resistance bands. Okay, so here is the breakdown for the hip mobilization. So I have a thicker resistance band. So it's gonna be a little bit stronger. And all I'm gonna do is find basically an anchor point, something for this to hang on to. So I'll circle this around and then thread it through, and then I just pull. So that's really all I need to do to get that set up. And then stepping into the resistance band and taking that all the way up in towards the hip and stepping away. So I have to find a place of resistance, otherwise it's not going to give me that traction. You can come into a kneeling position. So you're kind of just in a low lunge, and you can guide this knee out and in. So again, this is coming from the hip. I'm not really pushing from the knee, but allowing that hip to just find what it should be doing. So sometimes we get a little bit tight or things don't track correctly. So I'm just kind of allowing it to move in and out and forward and back. So maybe making some circles or just going from side to side and allowing that traction, that pulling, the resistance band, to really get some space in this hip socket. Then I'll go into upper body and back, shoulder activation. So I'll take a smaller, lighter resistance band, either doubled up or single. And I'm just gonna reach the arms overhead, keeping the arms pulling apart. So I'm gonna keep this resistance on the band, but just kind of tracking and seeing where the shoulders and the shoulder blades are positioned as I'm reaching the arms overhead. So a lot of times, especially when you lift kettlebells, people feel things in their shoulders. So it's important just to be aware of making sure you're not squeezing them when they shouldn't be squeezed together, and they're also not fully lifted up by the ears. So just finding that place. So just kind of, again, do 10 to 12 reps here, pulling the band apart at the top. So I'm keeping the resistance, little pull at the top, and then controlling on the way down. The next one that I'll do, again, you can double it up with palms facing up, or single, elbows pinned into the sides, and then thumbs pointing out. I'm just gonna pull the band apart and bring it back in. So the band will come towards the belly button, so it kind of stays at that height. And this is actually for these muscles in the back. So just finding the activation there and making sure, again, that the shoulders aren't creeping up by the ears. So again, finding different muscles that I'm going to use when I lift. So that way, every time I lift a kettlebell, I'm not just using kind of the shoulder to get the bell overhead, but actually using the lats and the muscles in the back to kind of help support that. And then the last two that I'll do is for some hips, glutes. So I'm going to step the feet into the band, about hip width, maybe a little bit wider, almost shoulder width. Then I'm going to turn and twist the band into an X shape and insert up to the shoulders. So now I'm just gonna take some lateral walks, keeping the band apart. So I don't wanna step the feet all the way together. So lateral squat walks, 10 each direction, twice through. So I'll do 10 on right, 10 on left, little shake out, and then go in again. And then the last one that I'll do is for glute max. So I'm just gonna do some glute bridges, heavy, heavy dumbbell on the hips. Shoulders are gonna be on the bench, and you're gonna keep looking forward instead of allowing the head to drop back, because it'll take the spine into a bit of extension. So I'm gonna lower the hips to a hover, and then press up and hold, squeezing for 5 seconds, and lower, and lift, squeeze for 5. You can do this with both legs, or you can have one single leg out in front. The challenge a little bit more through the hamstrings, but holding really high, really tight for 5 seconds. And I'll do that anywhere from 10 to 15 reps. If you have single leg, you'll switch obviously halfway through. But what I find is that preps most of what I need in order to lift safely and effectively. So if I'm doing, say I'm working on the jerk, or if I'm working on long cycle, which requires a lot of lower body in order to get the bell overhead, a lot of glutes, in order to protect that lower back and not let that weight drop. So I really like the lower body stuff to prep the hips, glutes, legs, and then kind of that resistance band work and the mobility stuff just to kind of prep the shoulders and the back and kind of open up the chest for all of that overhead lifting. So hopefully you find this helpful. And it's just a guide. It's not something that you have to follow religiously, but I find it's very effective for me just to kind of get the body ready for any workout, not just kettlebell lifting, but if I'm taking like a functional style class, or even if I'm doing yoga, I'll still do a little bit of mobility before every kind of workout that I do.